Hello everyone and welcome to Cinderful Gaming. I hope you're all doing well, I hope you're all staying safe, and most of all, I hope you're all fighting that war against the Grey. Today, we've got a little tournament report for you. This, in fact, was my very first Age of Sigmar 3.0 tournament, and it was a one-day event with 3 games over the single day at 2,000 points at my local friendly game store, Dragon's Lair Hobbies and Gaming, Salisbury. Now, today we're going to go through my games at the tournament. We'll go through talking a little bit about some of the lists that were there, and we'll look at, the meta of armies that was at the event as well, and also look at the scenarios and talk about what I thought about all of them as well in a competitive setting. So, with that, first of all, let's get looking at my list before we get looking into anything else. And so, to this tournament, I took my Living Cities army list. So I did do a slight change up on the list you see pictured here. I haven't got all the units painted up. It wasn't a painted requirement, so I tried out something different with my army. And so my list was as follows. Playing Living City, as you would expect. That's why I've got the Giant Tree Man in the army, Mortal Realm Gairan, and I've got a Grand Strategy Hold the Line. My thought is, it's nice and simple to think about this one. I don't have to do too much planning. It's if I have Battle Line unit, which is literally everything but my characters, if one of them survives, I'm pretty good for it. I do potentially get a Triumph. I'm 1995, so on that 5%, on that 5-point chance that I get the Triumph, I've gone with Bloodthirsty as my particular Triumph. There's a rerollable charge. It's really useful for me. I generally have that, used on Durthu if I ever get a Triumph available. We got a Nomad Prince for my general. He's my general so that all my wanderers can be taken in the army and become my battle line. He's got the command trait Skilled Leader. I'm not too particular fond of any of the Living City command traits. I think Skilled Leader just gives me extra command points on a 5+. I really like it. I've then got a Rune Lord, who's going to be my general's adjutant. Just another way to get some command points in there. Also, he's got the Universal Prayer Curse, which with a lot of high volume of attack models here, things like Wildwood Rangers do have 2 attacks each. They pack out 40 attacks. It's pretty easy to get them all in range in most fights with that 2-inch reach. Same for the Eternal Guard. They're generally going to be doing a decent amount of damage if you can get Curse to work. If not, Ward is really nice to have. It's one of the things I don't have generally throughout the whole army is Ward saves, so being able to put it on Durthu, the Ancient, or even some of the Eternal Guard or the Wildwood Rangers to help them survive a little bit better is nice. We've then got a Tree Lord Ancient, he's got the artifact, the War Droth Horn. This is the one that gives all Sylvaneth Living City units +1 attack, so really cool there. It's just a turn where if I can get both my Tree Lords in, they can be a little bit more devastating. He's got Law of Leaves, Life Surge, it's a healing spell. D6 heals is just nice. It can mean I can keep those Tree Lords around for a lot longer. And then I've got the Spirit of Durthu, who's got the artifact Spirit of the Hunt. This is amazing because it means Durthu strikes first in combat, meaning he's not relying on that 4+ from the Stomp to get in his damage first. And it also allows me to play around with that a little bit. And he also gets an extra Rend on that sword, making it a nice, a massive Rend -3 to get through all those hard to smash things. For my battle line units, I've got 2 units of 20 Wildwood Rangers, both of them being reinforced once. These are really cool. I mean, the whole reason I built this army originally was playing the old Viridian Pathfinders battalion, and now I've pretty much ported it over. I find Wildwood Rangers are hit and miss. They do really well against some opponents and not really well against some. They still are pretty decent, 2 attacks each at a 2-inch range, Rend 1, 3s and 3s is nice. They will put in some work even against non-monster characters, and if you come up against monsters, they will absolutely tear them to shreds. I've then got a unit of 5 Wild Riders. This is the unit I'm probably thinking of changing out of this list first. I just didn't have anything sort of fitting in there. I'm potentially thinking, because how I'm using this in this list now is much more of a harassing sort of unit rather than something charging forward. I think maybe Dark Riders may actually be the better option here, because they'll have the extra movement that the Wild Riders have, and also they've got a good range profile as well in comparison to the Wild Riders, which only have a combat profile which isn't all that great. I've then got 20 Eternal Guard, once again reinforced once. A nice solid unit they used to sort of hold my ground with. They're the one that sits back and just sort of does the defensive work of the army. Meanwhile, the rest of the army moves forward. And then 20 Shadow Warriors, reinforced ×1. This is a big one for me, whether or not 20 works better than 10 or 2 units of 10. But what 20 allows me to do here is allows me to play in the army, and it allows me to make them so they... I fit everything into a single battalion, and I keep my drops at 4 rather than going any higher. If I have another unit here out of these 5 that I've got here, I all of a sudden go up an extra drop. And then, speaking of battalions, we've got a battle regiment that includes all 5 of my units, and then I put the Ancient in that, because the Ancient is the one that's deploying on the table. This allows me just to draw out drops originally with the Tree Lord Ancient, just to help sort of get some stuff down on the table. And then I've got the Command Entourage as well, Magnificent, giving me an extra artifact, which is how I get both artifacts in the list. Come to 1,995 points, which is pretty cool. 4 reinforced units, taking full advantage of that. No allies, 124 wounds, which is nothing shabby. That's a decent amount of wounds on the table. And as I mentioned before, 4 drops. I really do enjoy playing this list, and I had some great fun over the weekend, as we'll discuss in a second. But first, let's get looking at the rest of the armies, or the rest of the field at least. And so here we have our little meta. There were 19 players. Now, unfortunately, we didn't have access to a Gumby, so there was needed to be some buyers at the event. It's not ideal, I know, but for a local store tournament with a close-knit community, I don't think there's an issue here. Now, we had 3 Kharadron Overlords players, all sort of playing the very similar sort of list. One of these was Mr. Alexander Cron from Aethercast himself. All playing a very, very similar list, an Ironclad with stuff in it and some pieces around that. 2 Lumineth Realm Lords armies. One of them was a Alumnia army with Teclis, and the other one, I can't remember what sub-faction it was, sorry, but it was another Teclis with, this one had some Dawn Riders and a bit more of a mixed arms sort of Lumineth list compared to the first one. 2 Maggotkin of Nurgle armies. One of them was running triple Grey Unclean one, the other one was running big blobs of Plague Bearers. We had 2 Soulblight Gravelords armies. One of these was a Vengorian Lord and 3 Terrorgeists, which was pretty cool. You can see the converted up Terrorgeists here on the screen. And the other one was running a Vrykos army with like all the wolf characters, had both Belladama and Radikar the Beast. 2 Seraphon armies. One of them had an allied Frost Phoenix and Croak, and the other Seraphon army was a Thunder Lizards army. 2 Iron Jaws, both pretty stock standard Iron Jaws. However, one of them did have both Kragnos and a Maw Crusher, which was awesome to see. 1 Big War army running a mixture of Orcs and a bunch of the Cruel Boys models in there as well. We then had a Skaven army, which was Skaven Scryer. This had 9 Storm Fiends as a big thing. An Ogre Tribes army with a heavy lean towards Beastclaw Raiders that included some Gutbuster units in some Iron Guts and some Lead Belchers. We then had Cities of Sigmar, which was my list we've just gone through. Stormcast Eternals using pretty much all the new models from Dominion. So some really cool 2+ stave Stormcast there exploding. And a Fire Slayers army, which is a pretty stock standard sort of Fire Slayers army you would expect to see in 2.0, sort of converted over to 3.0. There was a really nice mix of armies. I think, 19 players with only, half the field sort of doubling up. And even then, bar maybe the Kharadron, I think most of the armies were very individual. The Kharadron was probably the only one of the multiple armies where the lists were pretty similar. All nice stuff there, though. A really cool, fun meta. Now, the scenarios we played for this little tournament, round 1 we played Savage Gains. This one is a little bit of a golden oldie. This is one of the scenarios in the new book that I don't think changed an awful lot from its previous incarnation. This is pretty much Battle for the Past, 1 point for your own zone, 2 points for the middle, and then 4 points for getting your opponent's objective. A pretty sort of cool scenario. It gives a interesting dynamic on how the game's going to go. For me, it's a nice scenario, but it's definitely, I don't think, one of the scenarios that's sort of representing how 3.0 goes a lot. So it's fun, it's a good, solid scenario. It's just not, I think, I much prefer the scenarios that are scoring the 1-2 more way. Now, Power Struggle, it was next. This one did cause a couple of little headaches. I find the bookkeeping on Power Struggle, trying to figure out how long you've held objective for, can be a bit of a pain, but it is a really fun scenario. I do like the idea of having to hold stuff for 2 turns, which is fun, because this just creates an interesting dynamic in the game. It means you have to be able to play with some defensive units, you have to play with things in defensive tactics in mind. I honestly really do like the scenario. And then the last scenario is the Vice. I played my first game of this against a little brother on the channel in a battle report the other day. You can go check that one out, where he played Cities of Sigmar with a Hydra list against Beast of Chaos, which I played. But Vice is just fun. My biggest advice for anyone playing the Vice scenario is set up all the objectives before you start the game. Don't be during the middle of the game trying to figure out how and where those objective markers are dropping. Just set them up to begin with. So much easier. But yeah, 3 good scenarios. I honestly do like all these scenarios. There was no scenario I'm not particularly a fan of, so very, very cool. So, round 1, I was paired up against some Maggotkin of Nurgle. I was playing the list with a single grade on clean one and a ton of plague bearers. You can see some plague drones there. He also had the sloppy bile piper and the boil pox scrivener. Now, my big issue with this one was, do I have the punch to get through models when I'm not versing all that many monsters in the game? He also had, I believe it was Morbid X Twiceborn, but it could be any one of the Magath I honestly can't remember exactly which one. However, the game started, he took the turn, he moved up, he got his points, and then I went after that. I was sort of trying to focus on one flank, and I probably picked the wrong flank, I think, in the end. However, with it all, I just couldn't hit hard enough on the flank to sort of draw out and destroy, and Durthu did seriously whiff his first couple of attack rolls. The amount of 2s, and even when I used an all-out attack, the amount of 1s I rolled with Durthu, he had 2 rounds of whiffing before he actually got in and started doing some work. Some cool things did happen though. I got a unit of Wild Rangers in his backfield, and they took out the Magath Lord in a single round of combat, which was pretty darn cool. So them doing their jobs against monsters, I mean, they will chop a monster up nice and easy. But it was a good game. I think had we maybe played out a little differently, I might have got something more out of it. I think maybe taking the other flank would have been a better choice for mine in general. But the army did sort of work. I mean, and it for something that is main weakness, it trying to chew through other hordes, it's not particularly great at. The -1 to hit really did hurt the combat efficiency of most of my units, though when it did come pull to shove, the True Lord Ancient, the Eternal Guard, and the Wild Riders did blow through a whole unit of 20 Plague Bearers in a single turn, which was cool, but it was a little bit too late at that point. He also won the priority and chose to give away the turn and thus remove an objective off the table, and chose to remove the flanks objective of which I was fighting on. Had I won the thing, I would have given away the turn and not taken the advantage, and thus removed an objective that on the opposite flank of the table. And so this one, as you would expect, this did end in a loss for the cities of Sigmar. And then so round 2, I was versing some Ogre Moor tribes. We were playing the scenario power struggle. This is the one we have to sort of control objectives for 2 or more turns to start getting the points for them. This was a really fun scenario. Effectively, he put his Stonehorn down one side of the table, and then he had 4 Mournfang and some Iron Guts on the other flank, and I sent Durthu down the opposite flank to his Stonehorn, and Durthu went and absolutely wrecked house. Durthu first went into his Tyrant, made a nice big charge, and then wrecked that Tyrant up nice and quick, and then he also went into the Mournfang the turn after. As they got the double, Durthu pushed through, pretty much killed the Mournfang in a couple of turns, and then he also killed some Iron Guts as well that came in trying to hurt him, and pretty much cleaned up an entire flank on his own. Meanwhile, the Wild Rangers on the opposite flank, along with the Tree Lord Ancient, were able to hold off some Iron Guts, Lead Belchers, and the Stonehorn for a couple of turns. Even got a sneaky charge in with my Nomad Prince, full well knowing that, and giving him the option of, well, you can kill my Nomad Prince, which is my general now, but you've already picked a different battle tactic, and you haven't picked the Slayer Warlord yet, so you can't kill me this turn. And in that turn, the Nomad Prince actually managed to get some kills in. He's not too shabby in combat with 4 attacks at 3s and round 1 damage 2. He's pretty okay in combat. And then also just had the Eternal Guard deal with some backboard issues with him bringing on the Underworld Ogre Warband Hunter and his little menagerie. But all in all, this one was pretty simple. There wasn't too much to it. Ogres play a very simple game, and Durthu was just able to smash a little bit harder than they could on the flank, and his Stonehorn wasn't able to punch through in time. Though the Stonehorn did make quick work of the Tree Lord Ancient when he actually got in combat. It took only a couple of turns to get rid of the Tree Lord Ancient, and the Wildwood Rangers around him didn't last much longer after that either. But by that point, once they chewed through that, it was just a little bit too late. And so a major victory for the cities of Sigmar. And so round 3 didn't actually end up happening for me. I got the bye. It sucks that this had to happen in a tournament, but otherwise it was pretty cool. I got to wander around the tables and see how everyone else was doing. I mean, for me, it was more important that the newer members of our community sort of get together and get learning some of the games. I'm not short on games of the edition at all, so was quite happy to take the bye in the end. And so with this, I ended up going and finishing 10th on the ladder. We had a little bit of a scoring system we worked out for the buyers. And so that was pretty cool. Meant I finished 10th out of 19. You know, fine, who cares? This was all about getting the community together. What was really great about this is we have sort of a south side and a north side community of our city. And this got both sides together, meeting each other, playing some games together, and really just coming together as a full community, which was really great to see. Really happy with. But what we'll go do now is we'll go talk about the winning list. And so before we get into that winning list, I thought we'd just show the final standings here. So Lumineth Romelords did come first, and we'll look at their list in a second. We then had Scaventide in second, Soulblack Gravelords, Caradron, Magickin, Seraphon, Fireslayers, Ironjaws, Big Wire, Cities of Sigmar, me there in 10th. And then Ironjaws, Seraphon, Soulblack Gravelords, Caradron Overlords, Stormcast Eternals, Ogre Tribes, Lumineth Romelords, Magickin and Nurgle, and Caradron Overlords down at bottom as well. I think, all in all, there was a really great spread. There's no one besides maybe the Auric armies that is really sort of grouped together in their faction. I think, you know, we got Lumineth Romelords in at first, but they're also there at 17th. Magickin, very much the same, one there at 5th and one down at 18th. And Caradron, pretty much one in the middle, one at bottom, one at top. Mr. Alexander Cron there, showing his fellow admirals how to do it. It's a nice, solid, well-done field. I think everyone had a really good time, and there were some really great armies out there, some really pretty-looking ones as well. Despite this not needing to be a fully painted tournament, I think some people had some really good-looking armies. So, with that said, let's get looking at that winning list. And so this was the winning Lumineth Realmlords list. Great Nation Illumina, Great Strategy Hold the Line, Triumph, I wasn't exactly sure what their Triumph was. And then they had Teclis Catalar, who became their general, took the generic artifacts that they needed to take due to being Illumina. Then a unit of 20 Aurelin Wardens, a unit of 10 Aurelin Wardens, and 2 units of 20 Sentinels, an Umbral Spell Portal, all in a battle regiment, 1 drop, 1990 points, 3 out of 4 reinforced units, 91 wounds. This was solid. He took quite a few opponents off the table really quickly with that army. Just charged those Wardens forward and then pinned you in and peppered you with shots from the Sentinels and dominated you with magic from Teclis and Selenar. So just completely wiped the floor with a lot of the people at the tournament. I think 2 of his 3 games were pretty done and dusted very early on. Was a very solid list, and well done to Mark for running the list and getting the tournament win. The first tournament win of the brand new season over here in Australia. Well done, man. It was cool. All in all, a really great event. I hope everyone had fun that did went and watches this, and I look forward to seeing everyone again. Hopefully, also, if you're in my local area, come out to some tournaments. We have a fantastic time. Dragon's Lair Salisbury is a great host and venue, and it must go without saying a massive thank you to Len and Peter who run Dragon's Lair. They're absolutely amazing and a fantastic host for us all. Well, thank you for watching the video. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to turn those bell notifications on so you don't miss a thing when we upload on the channel. Now, next up, you can also come and chat more with us on our Discord server, which we've got a link to in the description of the video, and we've also got links there as well to our merch store on Teespring. Lastly, we'd like to give a shout out to everyone who helps support the channel via Patreon and YouTube members and in other ways. Thank you to our Patreon members: Christian Weir, James Soren, Chaos Spawn, AJC, Kenny Lowell, Outer and Shop First, James Crowder, Andrew Bowen, Nathan Fee, Tim Newman, The Rising Ape, Cure Dynamic, Agu, Anthony B, MJ, and Dynat226. And thank you to our YouTube members: Green Roots Gaming, Kenton Young, Steve T, The Real Zeop, Chris Wallace, True Rye 12, Vinny, Lock Lorick, Matt Mollum, and Becca Kinska Groupie. A special thank you as well to Lady Witchfox Art, who does all the amazing art for the channel, and to Xmorphic, who does a fantastic job at helping moderate our Discord server and keep everything nice and working there. If you'd like to help support the channel in a way like we've just seen, you can do so by finding the links to both Patreon and YouTube members in the description of the video. Thank you all for watching again though, stay safe everyone, stay well, and most of all, keep fighting that war against the Grey. Ciao for now.